January 2, 1999, began like any other Saturday in the quiet suburban streets of Mesa, Arizona. 11-year-old Mikelle Biggs and her 9-year-old sister, Kimber, had been playing outside their family's home, soaking in the last golden light of the afternoon. Mikelle, full of life and joy, was perched on her bicycle, waiting for the telltale sound of the ice cream truck that often passed through their neighborhood. Her hair, Kimber would later recall, shimmered in the fading sun. That image, Mikelle laughing in the cool breeze, pedaling slowly back and forth, is the last memory Kimber has of her sister alive. By all accounts, it was an ordinary evening. Children were out riding their bikes. Neighbors moved in and out of homes. But as the sun dipped lower, most of the kids began retreating indoors. Kimber, sensing the day was nearly done, urged Mikelle to come inside. Mikelle, determined not to miss the ice cream truck, chose to stay out just a few more minutes. Their house was only feet away. Kimber didn't think twice as she walked through the back door. Their mother, seeing only one daughter walk in, immediately sent Kimber back outside with a simple instruction: go tell Mikelle to come in. That's when everything began to unravel. Kimber stepped into the dimming evening and looked down their driveway toward the spot where her sister had been. Mikelle wasn't there. The street, moments before buzzing with laughter and bike wheels, had fallen silent. Kimber called out her sister's name. No answer. Her steps quickened as she approached the street. Then she saw it, her own bicycle lying oddly in the road. As she moved closer, something chilling caught her eye: Mikelle's bike, resting on its side, with its front tire still spinning. The quarters they'd planned to use for the ice cream truck were scattered on the asphalt. Everything else was gone. That eerie image, an abandoned bicycle still in motion, marked the start of what would become one of the most haunting cold cases in Arizona history. In a matter of 90 seconds, authorities believe Mikelle was abducted. Whoever took her moved with terrifying speed and precision. She was last seen at the intersection of Taltech and El Morro, a familiar area for the family, just steps from their front yard. The police responded swiftly. Officers canvassed the neighborhood and fanned out across Mesa. Helicopters hovered overhead. Door-to-door interviews were conducted. But as the hours turned into days, it became painfully clear: Mikelle had vanished without a trace. The only physical evidence was her bike and 2 quarters. There were no witnesses. No known suspects. No video footage. No sounds of a struggle. It was as if she had evaporated into the desert air. The Biggs family plunged into a nightmare that no family should endure. Their pain and desperation galvanized the local community. Flyers with Mikelle's face blanketed street corners and grocery store windows. Hundreds of volunteers joined search parties that scoured alleyways, desert fields, and drainage ditches. Candlelight vigils drew large crowds. News crews from around the country descended on Mesa. And Kimber, then just 9, had to navigate a world that no longer made sense, one where her sister had been stolen from just yards away, while she herself stood powerless to stop it. Kimber, now 34, still remembers the days after the disappearance with painful clarity. Speaking to ABC 15 a quarter-century later, she recalled the chaos that followed, and the weight of being the last person to see Mikelle. Despite her young age at the time, she carries the memory with the precision of someone who has turned over every detail 1,000 times in her mind. It was such a beautiful day, she said. And the last image I have of her is one of joy. Her hair was glowing in the sun. She was happy. And then, gone. Mesa police have never officially closed Mikelle's case. Over the years, they've followed thousands of leads. Most amounted to nothing: false sightings, hoaxes, vague claims, and dead ends. But one name has remained on investigators' radar from the very beginning: D. Blaylock. Blaylock was no stranger to law enforcement. He lived in the Biggs neighborhood at the time Mikelle disappeared and had a troubling history. Though he was never arrested or charged in connection with Mikelle's abduction, his name repeatedly surfaced in early investigative reports. Blaylock was eventually imprisoned for unrelated violent crimes months after the search for Mikelle began. In a strange twist, a local news station unearthed video footage from just 10 days after the disappearance. In it, Blaylock appears at a neighborhood block watch meeting, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're my neighbor and I see you doing something suspicious," he said, "I guarantee you I'd be calling 911. The footage is chilling in retrospect: a suspected predator standing amid grieving neighbors, presenting himself as a concerned citizen. Detective Paul Sipe, now leading the investigation with Mesa PD, has zeroed in on Blaylock. He told ABC 15 that of all the individuals ever considered in the case, Blaylock remains the person of interest. Sipe has even requested the original 1999 footage of Blaylock at the Blockwatch event, hoping it could provide new insights or behavioral cues. While no charges have been filed, and no new evidence has definitively linked Blaylock to the crime, Sipe remains determined to speak with him. Blaylock remains incarcerated. The case has cast a long shadow across Mesa, especially for the Biggs family. Time may have passed, but the ache of that day has not dulled. For Kimber, it led to a calling. Now a mother herself, she has found strength through advocacy, recently joining the National Criminal Justice Training Center. There, she helps educate law enforcement officers on how to work with families of missing children, bringing to the table the raw, first-hand perspective of someone who's lived through unimaginable loss. "I'm doing this because I love her," Kimber said. "Because she deserves peace. And because families deserve better." In a world that often forgets cold cases, Kimber has refused to let Mikelle become just another name on a list. In the days and weeks after Mikelle Biggs vanished, the streets of Mesa changed. Patrol cars became a near-constant presence. Missing posters, once stapled to telephone poles and bulletin boards, were weather-beaten reminders of a girl the city refused to forget. The community rallied. Candlelight vigils were held, search parties formed, and hope remained fixed on the belief that Mikelle had to be nearby, maybe being held, maybe afraid to call out, maybe just waiting to be found. Yet the case turned cold with unusual speed. There had been no witnesses. No screams. No tire tracks. No signs of a struggle. Just the spinning wheel of a purple and white bicycle left in the middle of the road. For the Mesa Police Department, this was no ordinary missing child case. They knew almost immediately they were dealing with a likely abduction, one executed in under 2 minutes with military precision. The area was canvassed repeatedly. Canines searched storm drains and alleyways. Homes were entered with warrants, outbuildings searched, even dumpsters overturned. But they were chasing a ghost. Still, one name floated to the surface early on: D. Blaylock. He wasn't pulled from thin air. Blaylock lived just 2 blocks from the Biggs residence at the time Mikelle vanished. He was already known to police, a registered sex offender with a violent criminal past. His record included the kind of charges that made investigators' skin crawl. More importantly, he fit the profile of someone capable of snatching a child quickly and silently, then vanishing without a trace. But suspicion alone isn't evidence. Police spoke with him, interviewed neighbors, and checked his alibi. He appeared on camera in the weeks following Mikelle's disappearance, standing just feet from a news van, speaking about neighborhood safety and the importance of watching each other's backs. The irony wasn't lost on some of the officers watching that footage years later. It was as if he had inserted himself into the narrative deliberately. Then came the horrifying twist. In 2001, 2 years after Mikelle vanished, Blaylock was arrested for the brutal rape and attempted murder of a woman he had known for years. He had broken into her home, raped her, stabbed her multiple times, and left her to die. Miraculously, she survived. Her testimony would help put him behind bars for a sentence of 187 years. That conviction ignited a new sense of urgency in Mikelle's case. Cold case detectives went back through the original files. The proximity. The timing. His criminal pattern. It all lined up. And yet, without a shred of physical evidence, Blaylock remained just a person of interest, not a suspect. They couldn't place him at the scene, couldn't tie him to any object left behind, couldn't prove anything concrete. Years passed. Mikelle's parents divorced. Her mother, Tracy, stayed in Arizona, living with the ache of unanswered questions. Her father, Darian, moved away, haunted by guilt for not being home the day his daughter was taken. The toll it took on the family was incalculable. Kimber, Mikelle's younger sister, carried the heaviest burden of all, the last person to see her alive, the one who found the bike. She was only 9 years old. As Kimber grew up, the shadow of that day never left her. But instead of shrinking beneath it, she stepped into the light. She became a speaker, an advocate for missing children, and eventually joined the National Criminal Justice Training Center. Her work brought her face-to-face with detectives, prosecutors, and investigators across the country. Her message was consistent: never give up. Families never forget. In 2018, something unexpected reignited public attention. A dollar bill surfaced in Neenah, Wisconsin, over 1,500 miles from Mesa. On its edge, written in shaky block letters, were the words, "My name is Mikelle Biggs, kidnapped from Mesa, Arizona, I'm alive." The misspelling of Mikelle's name caught everyone's attention. Was it a hoax? A cruel prank? Or a real cry for help written by a child-turned-adult held against her will? The bill passed through a fast food restaurant before being noticed by a customer. It was turned over to police, who traced it back to a nearby liquor store, but surveillance footage had already been erased. There were no fingerprints on the dollar. No DNA. And the handwriting couldn't be confirmed. Investigators leaned toward a hoax, but in a case this cold, no tip could be dismissed entirely. The timing of the dollar bill was haunting. Kimber had just spoken at a national conference days before. Her sister's name was once again circulating in law enforcement circles. It was as if the universe had been stirred. Despite the skepticism, Kimber saw something different in that moment. It wasn't about whether the bill was real. It was about the fact that people still cared. That her sister's name still triggered responses, still generated media attention, still refused to be buried beneath the passage of time. That same year, a new detective was assigned to Mikelle's case, Paul Sipe. And he wasn't content to sit on old theories. He wanted to start fresh. He requested all interviews, all files, and, most importantly, all video. He came across the old footage of Dee Blaylock speaking to the news crew in 1999. And something about Blaylock's presence, his posture, his insistence on being seen, struck a nerve. Sipe didn't mince words. "I would say he is the person of interest," he told local reporters. Not one of many. The only one. It was the closest law enforcement had ever come to pointing the finger publicly. Today, Blaylock remains incarcerated, serving a life sentence in an Arizona prison. He has never confessed. Never hinted at involvement in Mikelle's case. But detectives are watching. They know time may loosen lips. They know prison has a way of wearing a man down. Sipe has made it clear, he intends to speak to Blaylock directly. 25 years have passed since Mikelle Biggs disappeared. Her purple and white bicycle is long gone. The sidewalk she stood on is cracked with age. But her story has not faded. Her name still echoes through classrooms, training sessions, and police departments. For Kimber, every day is a balance between memory and momentum. "I don't need a body," she says. "I don't need a conviction. I just need the truth." Years passed, and yet the image of Mikelle Biggs, missing, frozen at age 11, never faded from the community's collective memory. Her face was plastered on flyers, her story became the subject of television specials, and her name remained etched into the city of Mesa's heart. But behind the candlelight vigils and media features, the family remained trapped in a torturous stasis. The world moved on. They did not. With no physical evidence, no eyewitnesses, and no confession, the case sat dormant in the cold case unit. Investigators who had once stood in the heat for hours searching with dogs now sat behind desks, waiting for that one elusive breakthrough, a call, a slip-up, a fresh tip. Then, in a strange twist of fate, Detective Paul Sipe was assigned to Mikelle's case in the 2010s. Sipe wasn't new to the Mesa Police Department, but he brought something the case hadn't seen in years, a renewed focus and a direct theory. He wasn't interested in cycling through vague possibilities. Sipe had one name in mind from the beginning, Dee Blaylock. Blaylock had lived in close proximity to the Biggs home in 1999. His criminal record was a chilling scroll of violence, sexual assaults, aggressive behavior, and in 2001, just 2 years after Mikelle's disappearance, a brutal rape and attempted murder of a woman in Mesa. That conviction sent him away for 187 years. For Sipe, it was more than just a coincidence. It was a pattern. He described Blaylock as someone who had proven beyond doubt that he could commit such crimes, and his presence in the neighborhood at the time Mikelle went missing could no longer be viewed as circumstantial. The problem, however, was unchanged. No physical evidence had ever tied him to Mikelle's case. Not a fiber. Not a print. Nothing. But Sipe was undeterred. He launched a re-investigation of Blaylock, digging through old files, re-interviewing witnesses, and using updated forensic technology in hopes of uncovering a previously missed link. He even tried to engage Blaylock himself. But the man wouldn't talk, not about Mikelle, not about anything. The silence was deafening. As the investigation pressed forward behind closed doors, the Biggs family continued to be pulled into emotional storms. In 2018, nearly 2 decades after Mikelle disappeared, a strange item surfaced in Neenah, Wisconsin. A local woman received a $1 bill as change at a fast food restaurant. On it, in childlike handwriting, were the words, "My name is Mikelle Biggs, kidnapped from Mesa, Arizona. I'm alive." The spelling of her name, Mikelle, instead of Mikelle, raised doubts. But the gravity of the message couldn't be ignored. For a fleeting moment, hope surged. Could it be her? Could Mikelle be alive somewhere, trying to reach out? The bill was turned over to police. The FBI ran handwriting analysis. Forensic testing was performed. But like so much else in this case, the dollar turned out to be a ghost. No usable fingerprints. No DNA. No surveillance footage. Nothing that could trace it back to the person who had written it. The origin of the bill remains unknown to this day. Kimber Biggs, now an adult, was devastated. It wasn't the first false hope the family had endured, but it struck a particularly raw nerve. Over the years, Kimber had grown into a powerful advocate, choosing not to let her sister's disappearance define her by sorrow alone. She pursued criminal justice, joined advocacy efforts, and became a voice for families of missing children. But behind that strength remained an unhealed wound. She had been the last to see Mikelle alive. She had waited with her on the sidewalk, rushed inside for just a moment, and come back to find only a spinning bicycle wheel and a scattered trail of melting ice cream. And still, no one had answered for it. Over time, many began to quietly accept that Mikelle had likely been murdered within minutes of her abduction. Experts theorized that the kidnapper had acted fast, knew the area, and likely had a place nearby to hide her. The crime had been premeditated. There were no screams. No struggle. No time. If it was Blaylock, and most investigators privately believed it was, then Mikelle's remains were likely destroyed, or buried in a place so remote they might never be found. But without a body, the case could not be closed. Without evidence, there would be no indictment. No trial. No confession. The pain of that reality haunted Mikelle's parents, Darcy and Daryl Biggs. As the years wore on, their marriage strained under the weight of grief. Publicly, they continued to make appearances, grant interviews, and beg for anyone to come forward. But behind the scenes, they were slowly crushed by the not knowing. By the birthdays that came and went. By the unopened presents. The unused schoolbooks. Every few years, the story would make a brief resurgence in the media. A new technology. A new cold case spotlight. A statement from a detective saying, "We're still working on it." But eventually, the story would fade again, until the next small flicker brought it back to life. And yet, for all the sadness, for all the silence and stagnation, the case remains open. The Mesa Police Department continues to treat Mikelle Biggs' disappearance as an active investigation. And Dee Blaylock, incarcerated, aging, silent, remains their primary suspect. But time is the true enemy now. Witness memories degrade. Evidence degrades. Files go missing. Detectives retire. And still, one girl's final moments hang in a void, unanswered. Kimber continues to plead for resolution. "All I want is the truth," she said. "I just want to know what happened to her." It's a simple plea. And yet, for more than 25 years, it has gone unanswered. Somewhere in the fabric of that quiet Mesa neighborhood, a secret remains buried. Whether it lives in the mind of a dying inmate, or in an overlooked file, or beneath the dry Arizona soil, no one can say. But until that secret is unearthed, Mikelle Biggs is not just a memory, she is a question. One that demands an answer. Thank you for listening to Crime Echoes with Lewis. For more content like this, please like this video and subscribe to my channel.